Hello, friends. My name is John. I'm a recovered alcoholic and drug addict. And my topic today is about being simple and not easy. I remember when I was in the trades, I was in trade school, and the guy introduced us this KISS method. And it's basically just keep it simple, stupid. I think it was kind of offensive at the time, but I like simple and I like easy. And so this is where I get into a bit of a debacle. So where I want to read out of is the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous on page 13. It talks about this concept. So on page 13 and 14, I really believe it's the Bible for Dummies in like a paragraph. And so if this is new to you, I just want to introduce this to you, this concept, and kind of break that down and what that looks like. So this is for somebody to be recovered. There's a path to be recovered, and we take this path and we get to be recovered from a seamlessly hopeless state of mind and body through a relationship with God. And so we kind of start with grace. We kind of start with maybe God separate us from the things that are going to kill us. And we call this a grace period. In my experience, grace period runs out. Just like when you go rent a car, you get like a little hour grace period when you go to return it. But they will charge you for another full day if you don't get that in with a certain amount of time. So just like my relationship with God and my addiction, I have to move from grace into relationship, out of relationship with the lifestyle, the thinking, the inner problem, because drugs and alcohol were my solution, and now I need a new solution. And so I've come to know that solution is God. So this is what it says: belief in the power of God. Plus, that's interesting right there. So the belief, just my belief in God doesn't necessarily give me the power that I need from God. And so this is where you could get in a theological debate where, my belief, is that going to send me to heaven, or like, am I saved? I don't know. I have some opinions on that, but salvation is free and grace is free. I think the point of a belief, is to move me towards the object of my belief, so that I put my faith in and that I fully give my trust to, because trust is the action of my faith, and my faith comes from my belief. And so I really have to put my belief in something other than me. Where I got the me part was I was born into it. I was born into this world. I was born into maybe some chaos, maybe some early wounding, probably no different than anybody listening right now. And inside of me, that created a bit of a storm. That created me to think I was different than everybody else. That created me to feel like there was always something else that I might be missing. I was literally the kid that peed my pants. I don't know why I'm telling everybody this right now, but I was that kid that I would do the pee dance, but I couldn't go pee because I might miss something. And there was on more than one occasion where I'm peeing my pants because I didn't want to miss anything. That is inside of me. I don't feel comfortable, even relieving myself because I think something else is going to happen. That stuff is inside of me. And that's where my unmanageability comes in from. I don't know how you deal with that. I don't know if that's your experience. A lot of other people that I've worked with have kind of the opposite, where they withdraw. I was one that needed to be the life of the party. Where are we going tonight? What are we going to do? And even as a little kid, that was kind of the heartbeat of my life. Is like, basically, I need your approval. I need to be seen, and I need a pat on my back, and I'm going to prove myself that I deserve to breathe the same air. So all of that is inside of me. And when I found my manager being alcohol and drugs and smoking and relationships and all of that stuff, that actually demanded the effort. And so in the spiritual life, it's the same thing where I have this problem. You're telling me to take away the solution that I've had for 15 years. And my experience was 15 years of active addiction. And I'm taking that away, but I have to have a new manager because the problem is inside of me and it doesn't just go away. And so this grace is free, but it demands or requires effort, which I don't really like the effort part of things. I've come to notice that in my, 16 years of active recovery is like, I like things just to happen. But the reality is I gotta actually put effort into these things that I want to grow and strengthen. Like, if I want to get physically fit, I got to go to the gym. I can't do that by osmosis, although I would love to. I don't mind waking up to go to the gym and just being in the gym, but it's actually like moving weight around and like sweating and like putting this required effort to rip and tear. Oh my goodness. How about my marriage? I just went away for a week with zero internet and Wi-Fi. We had to look at each other's eyeballs all the time. We got connected. There was teaching, there was mentorship for 1 week, and it required an effort. It required me to step out of my comfort zone. It required me to spend quality time and connection time and to do these exercises that I didn't necessarily want to do. But to see the benefit of it, walking it out this week is well worth the effort that it took. And so we got to get out of grace and into relationship, which requires effort. So belief in the power of God plus enough willingness, honesty, and humility. So am I trying to prove myself? Am I trying to make sure everybody knows? Like that, I need the humility and the openness, willingness, and honesty to actually move into relationship with God, because I need to establish and maintain a new order of things in my heart. Where were the required essential requirements? And then it says simple but not easy. And so when I break that down, I kind of had to think back about like, what have I done in my life that's basically very simple but not easy? So the one thing, if I wanted to spark an argument, and this is going back maybe 10 years ago, Vicky's already laughing because she already knows what it is. If I wanted to have Hiroshima, World War XIV on my hands, all I would have to suggest is if we took a look at the Visa bill, look at the bank, I would look at the bank account and go like, oh, wow, like we're short that much money. Like, how are we going to pay for this? And then it was just like lighting a fuse because we're sitting on a powder keg. And it just wasn't a healthy place to live in our active recovery. And so we went to seek mentorship. We went to go see a company called More Than Enough, and they help people like us deal with our money issues, because it's really not, money is not the issue. It's the heart of how we spend our money and what we spend our money on. And so we were able to go under some mentorship, and their concept was very simple about debt and how you pay that down. And then we had to live by a budget. I'm a growing adult that I get a paycheck. Okay. For the first 7 years of my paychecking in my sobriety life, I actually had to give that paycheck to my mom. Otherwise, the bank would hold it for like 2 weeks. That's the consequences of my addiction. So really, me being an adult wasn't that being far from being a child anyway. So we grow into our healthy lives. Maybe you can relate with that a little bit. So I had to live by a budget. I had to take, this is coming in, this is what needs to go out, this is what we have value for, whether it's, one little vacation, whether it's this, maybe eating out, maybe buying clothes, whatever it is, we take these little bits and it's pretty simple. Like it's on a spreadsheet. How much more simple can that get? And it's not a complex spreadsheet. It's just simple. This is every paycheck. This is what we do with the money. And we put it in these envelopes. Before COVID, we were envelope people. We were cash money people. We Nobody actually had cash. Like we'd never see cash anymore. But like it was a very simple thing, but it wasn't easy. So simple is the opposite of complicated. So where there is simplicity, it's easy to understand. And so we worked on this budget. It was very simple instructions, but to carry it out, it required or demanded effort, and it demanded our attention, and it wasn't easy to implement, and it wasn't that easy to execute. So that's kind of where we get this concept. There's the simplicity is the opposite of complicated. It's understandable, and then not easy is about implementation and execution. So that's kind of the concept of this pathway to God, this being in recovery or being recovered. That's what it requires. So just starting back at the beginning of that paragraph on the bottom of 13, my friend promised, and that's one thing that the recovered life will compel you to do. It will compel you to go to friends. It'll compel you to go to people that you feel are lost and that you can give hope to, that you're compelled to just share the things that happen inside of me. And what happened inside of me was the thunderstorm stopped and there was peace and there was joy. The thunderstorm will never stop on the outside, but it got to stop on the inside. Man, that's a miracle. Having a mental obsession removed, having something that is constantly a buzz in my head, absolutely removed, that's exciting. And so I want to tell the world about that. So my friend promised when these things were done, I would enter upon a new relationship with my Creator. So what are these things? If you go back to page 12, it talks about this relationship with God, like coming to really understand that I have no power over what substances do to me. I have no power physically and mentally. Basically, when I start, I can't stop safely. And when I stop, I keep on starting. That is a hopeless state of mind and body. And then I have these prejudices that kind of mold my opinion and belief in who God actually is. And so this is where we get to be invited into having a different conception of who God is, because in our literature, they've given us suggestions on who God is. The conception isn't some made up hairy-fairy idea. It's really revolved around employer. So my employment, my father, my director, my principal. So when you look at God, that's going to solve all of the problems within me, then I have to change my prejudices of there's probably some of you that when I say father, you're like, ugh, like, no, I can't see God as a father. I can see God as this, this universal nature type ideal. But if I have to move from grace into relationship, I actually have to have a relationship with more than airy-fairy universe. And so when I look at what a healthy director is, what a healthy father is, what a healthy employer is, and what a healthy principal is, then I can use that concept to walk into this new relationship. And so when I think of director, I get my script for the day. When I think of father, I get structure and discipline and provision. I don't have the responsibility of running my life anymore. He does. When I look at employer, I am not employed by man. I'm employed by God. So what is God wanting me to do, and where is he going to send me? And as a good employer, he's going to meet all of my needs. And then as a principal, I'm the agent. The principal is like the insurance company. I'm just the representation. So I actually have to have quite a great relationship with this higher power, with God, so that I can actually be his representation as I go house to house, as I see the tornado damage, the earthquake damage. I'm going on his representation. I am his representation. And we get to do that because we get to have a relationship from the inside, because nothing on the outside needs to change. The outside is always going to be chaos and storms, whatever that looks like in your life. There's always going to be the tests and trials and tribulations of life. but it doesn't. I get peace on the inside of me, and so that's the good news. So then we get this conception of who God, how I get to be in a relationship with the concept of God. I get to stop playing God because that's where all my problems have arisen. And then it talks about kind of going through this process of really offering myself to God, to dying of self, of actually putting my hands up. This is who I am. These are all my passions, dreams, desires, and I need utter destruction of self. Jesus actually talks about the price had to be paid. God made a way so that we can have a relationship, and he did that through his son that he sent to this earth, and that he died on a cross. And basically, biblical literature says we have to follow that example and die on our cross daily. I have to pick up my cross on a daily basis in Luke 9, verse 23. And then out of my death, what happened when Jesus left? He left his spirit on the whole entire world. And so that's what I can have a relationship. I can have a relationship on the inside of me, spiritually connected to God, powered by his love and his spirit. And through that, I get to be transformed on the inside. And so this is where I get to offer myself to God, and then I get to really see ruthlessly, it says, face my sins and became willing to have my newfound friend take them away, root and branch. So this is kind of that concept of creating the Garden of Eden inside. And so what was a cesspool, a bog, all of this stuff God just needs to rip it up. I have to identify it, come into consent, and that's where we go into this inventory process. So I really get to see what's on the inside, what's driving me. Fear is a slave driver. Fear is telling me that I have to prove myself, that I have to, be noticed, that I have to be valued, and I have to work up this ladder of getting a great reputation. And all of these principles and values that I have written in my head are coming out of the enemy of fear. And so I have to go into like this heart surgery and get to see these things and come into consent with them, because in the spiritual realm, I actually have to come into consent. In the spiritual realm, Satan didn't have any access to Job unless God gave it to him. And so what happens in love is consensual at the bottom of love. Otherwise, it's controlling. And so we have come into consent through our wounding and through the messages of our wounding. And we've come into agreement with them. Maybe you were ignored. Maybe you were, abandoned as a kid. Maybe, some stuff happened to you, and out of that wound came a message. And typically we come into agreement. Yeah, I'm not valuable. I'm not loved. Oh, I got to prove myself. And then you make these vows of, yeah, I got to be noticed. I got to prove myself. No one will ever take advantage of me again. All of those things are actually vows. And this is how the enemy has access to my heart. And so now I have to do this process. And if you haven't done a process in LifeLab or the 12 steps, then really maybe after this meeting, touch base and we'll get you started in that, because we want to come into consent with God's love on the inside. And so we go through this process, and only God can separate me from the things that I can't separate from myself, including resentment and fear, all these root systems and all of these principles and lies and all of that stuff. And I need a total cleanse and for God to rewrite over all of the garbage that I believed and come into consent with. And so then we go into this process of making a list of people that I had hurt and towards whom I felt resentful. I expressed my entire willingness to approach these individuals, admit my wrongs. Never was I to be critical of them. I was right. I was to right all such matters to the utmost of my ability. I was to test my thinking by the new God consciousness. Common sense would thus become uncommon sense. I was to sit quietly when in doubt, only asking for direction and strength to meet my problems as he would have me. Never was I to pray for myself, except for my requests bore on my usefulness to others. Then only might I expect to receive, but that would be in great measure. So this is the path and way to God. This is the good news for us simple folk. It's very instructional, but it is not free from effort. And so when I do all these things, I would have the elements of such a way of living that would answer all my problems. Are you solving all of your problems from within you? Or do you have all these problems outside of you that are causing you disturbances on the inside? That is a great promise. I would have all the elements of a way of living which answered all of my problems. Belief in the power of God plus enough willingness, honesty, and humility to establish and maintain a new order of things were the essential requirements. A simple but not easy. A price had to be paid. It meant destruction of self-centeredness. I must turn in all things to the Father of light who presides over us all. And this is where you get that concept of dying of self, of picking up your cross daily. You see in John 6:63 where we read that the Spirit gives life to the Spirit. This is how I'm reborn. You see the stories about Nicodemus. You see the story of the woman that bled for 12 years. They had conversion experiences. They were reborn. We did that meditation today about the bleedy woman. For 12 years, she reached out because she had heard the power of Jesus could make her well. Have you heard that? Have you heard that today? Are you willing to reach out? And as that word called reach out, it actually means cling to, grab a hold of, attach yourself to. Or am I holding on? And this is the concept that I see many of us do. We have, the everlasting water in this one hand, and then we have my old ideas and beliefs in this hand, and it looks like I have a relationship with God. It looks like I do, but when this gets threatened, when this gets taken away, when my security, when my sex, when my relationships get rocky, I hold on to this with both hands. The idea is to be recovered, I have to put this down with both hands and fully grasp the cloak of Jesus. And that's how I enter into relationship with the Father and the Spirit. I give 100% of my hand grip to holding on to him. And it's interesting that one of the miracles that Jesus did, these guys lowered their friend down through this hole. It was a big scene. He was crippled and he wanted to walk. And Jesus actually confronts the guy and starts talking to him and actually says, your sins are forgiven. Isn't that what our problem is internal, not just physical, but so much we like to look at everybody on the outside and look what they're all doing to me. They're crippling me. They're taking my life from me. And we're just holding on to this for dear life because we're so scared to fully grasp the love of God. And only God can make that possible, but it requires or demands my effort. And so you might have heard in the Bible, in Matthew, it says, seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things will be added unto you. So basically, all I have to do is give my life to God and serve him fully. You get another story in Martha and Mary, and you have these two sisters, and one is doing and preparing, and she gets a little frustrated at Mary because Mary's at the foot of Jesus, just sitting there, hanging out, listening, and Martha gets mad and says, hey, help me out. Like, what are you doing? Like, I'm feeling insecure. I'm feeling sorry for myself, and you're just sitting there, and you're the cause of my problems internally. And Jesus said, Mary is doing what is best. And so maybe that's new for you, is maybe just sitting and being still, maybe just being directed and fathered and employed and having a principle and really learning and growing and actually being transformed on the inside. And so that is what we're talking about in the recovered life. It is simple, but it's not easy. And so just like your finances, just like your marriage, there are simple, practical things to follow, rules to follow, principles to adhere to, but it doesn't mean that it's easy. So I guess my prayer to close would be, would God give you the strength to make this not a burden and not something that's going to weigh you down. But I just pray that God finds a way that you are transformed and fueled by his spirit and his love. And so that his yoke will be easy and his burden will be light. He is the parent. He is the father with all the responsibility. So I just leave you with that today is this is a simple message, but it might not be easy because it demands effort. Thank you so much.